Have you ever sent a message and been met with nothing but silence? You see the delivered status, maybe even the dreaded read receipt, yet no reply. And you wonder, what did I do wrong? The truth is, most people don't ignore messages to be cruel. They ignore messages that don't spark anything inside them. No curiosity, no emotion, no urgency. Their world is filled with distractions, and if your message doesn't cut through the noise, it simply gets lost. That's why today, I'm giving you the 7 messages they cannot resist. Messages that grab attention, ignite curiosity, and create a pull so strong that ignoring them is nearly impossible. These are not manipulative tactics. They're not gimmicks. They are rooted in human nature, in our deep psychological need for connection, mystery, and significance. And once you understand them, your messages will never be ignored again. I want you to imagine this. After this video, you start using these messages. Suddenly, responses come faster, more engaged, more genuine. You go from being just another notification to someone people want to talk to. This is about Stoic relationships, where communication is built on intention and clarity rather than randomness and desperation. So let's begin, and trust me, you'll want to stick around to the very last one, because the final message is so powerful, so effective, that once you use it, you'll understand why people have to reply. 1. The curiosity hook message. Curiosity is one of the most powerful psychological forces known to humanity. It drives us to explore the unknown, solve mysteries, and seek out answers even when we don't have to. Think about the last time you watched a movie that ended on a cliffhanger. You couldn't stop thinking about what would happen next. Or the last time someone told you, "I have something to tell you, but I'm not sure if I should." Didn't your mind immediately start racing, wondering what it could be? This is the power of the curiosity hook, and when used correctly in messaging, it makes a response almost inevitable. One of the biggest mistakes people make in texting is giving away too much too soon. They lay out all the details, explain everything in one message, and leave nothing for the other person to wonder about. But the key to getting a reply isn't about how much you say, it's about what you leave unsaid. When there is unfinished business, the mind struggles to let it go. It seeks closure. And that's exactly what makes the curiosity hook so effective. Imagine you send someone a message that says, "You won't believe what just happened." That's it. No details, no explanation. What happens next? Their mind starts working. Immediately, what happened? Was it something good, something bad? They can't just ignore it, they need to know more. The easiest way for them to find out? Reply. The brain craves answers, and when you create an open loop like this, people naturally feel compelled to respond. But let's take it a step further. What if instead of saying, "You won't believe what just happened," you texted, "I just saw something that reminded me of you"? This adds personal intrigue. Now it's not just about curiosity, it's about them. It triggers a new question in their mind. What did you see? Why did it remind you of me? And since people are naturally drawn to anything that involves themselves, they feel an even stronger urge to reply. This taps into a fundamental truth about human psychology. People love to feel relevant, remembered, and connected. Still, the real magic happens when you add a layer of tension. Instead of simply saying, "I saw something that reminded me of you," you could say, "I saw something that reminded me of you, but I'm not sure if I should tell you." Now, you've created a mini internal battle in their mind. They don't just want to know, they need to know. When something is left unresolved, the brain keeps working on it until it finds closure. This is the same reason we binge-watch TV shows with cliffhangers. The brain can't let go of unfinished business. But let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation. It's not about tricking someone into replying. It's about making conversations engaging and dynamic, rather than predictable and boring. Most texts get ignored because they don't spark anything. They don't make the recipient feel anything. The curiosity hook, when used correctly, adds an emotional charge to your message. It transforms it from just another notification into something intriguing, compelling, and almost impossible to ignore. Of course, not every curiosity hook is created equal. If overused or applied carelessly, it can come across as gimmicky or insincere. The key is to use it authentically, to genuinely build intrigue without forcing it. The best curiosity hooks feel natural and make sense in the context of the conversation. If you use them excessively or with no real intent, they lose their power. For example, imagine a friend messages you, "I have something to tell you." That's already a curiosity hook, but if they say that all the time, it eventually loses its impact. But what if they only use it when there's actually something meaningful or unexpected to share? Then, when you see a message like that, your brain knows it's something important, and you feel an even stronger urge to reply. There's also another way to take this even further, by combining curiosity with emotional triggers. Instead of saying, "I have something to tell you," what if you said, "I have something to tell you," and it completely changed the way I see things. Now you've introduced a personal transformation, something deep and thought-provoking. The other person doesn't just want to know what happened, they want to understand what could have possibly been so impactful that it changed your perspective. When you link curiosity with an emotional hook, you create a message that is practically irresistible. And yet, here's something most people don't realize. Timing matters just as much as content. Even the most powerful curiosity hook will fail if it's sent at the wrong time. If the person is busy, distracted, or simply not in the right headspace, they might still ignore your message, even if it's highly intriguing. That's why one of the best ways to use curiosity hooks effectively is to pay attention to patterns. If someone tends to reply quickly in the evenings, that's when you send it. If they engage more in the mornings, that's when you strike. This isn't about controlling the conversation, it's about understanding human behavior and communicating with intention. Stoicism teaches us that true power lies not in forcing things to happen, but in understanding the natural flow of life and aligning ourselves with it. The same applies to communication. If you understand what drives human behavior, you don't have to chase after attention, it naturally comes to you. By using curiosity hooks at the right time and in the right way, you shift the dynamic. Instead of sending messages that get ignored, you send messages that people can't resist. So here's the challenge. The next time you're about to message someone, pause. Instead of dumping all the information at once, think about how you can introduce curiosity. Can you create an open loop? Can you make them wonder? Can you leave something unsaid, just enough to pull them in? This small shift can completely change the way people respond to you. And if you think this is powerful, just wait until you see what's next. Because the next type of message is even stronger. It's the kind that doesn't just spark curiosity, but makes people feel valued, appreciated, and deeply connected to you. And when you can do that, you become someone people never ignore. 2. The personalized compliment message. Everyone likes to feel valued. It's a universal truth. When someone recognizes our strengths, notices something unique about us, or appreciates us in a way that feels genuine, we naturally feel a pull toward them. But the mistake most people make when giving compliments is that they are too generic, too predictable, and too easily ignored. When someone hears, "You're so smart," or "You're so beautiful," it barely registers. Why? Because they've likely heard it before. It doesn't feel personal, it doesn't feel earned, and most importantly, it doesn't make them feel anything deep enough to respond. But what if you could send a message that not only gets a response, but makes the other person think about you long after the conversation is over? That's what a personalized compliment does. It's not about flattery, it's about genuinely recognizing something unique about the other person that they might not even realize about themselves. This taps into a core human need, the need to be seen and understood. Imagine you message someone, "I just realized something. You have this way of staying completely calm under pressure, even when everyone else is panicking. How do you do that?" What makes this message so powerful? First, it's specific. You're not just saying, "You're amazing," you're pointing out an actual trait they have. Second, you're making them think about themselves in a positive way. Most people don't stop to acknowledge their own strengths. Third, you're asking a question. This creates an invitation for conversation, rather than just throwing out a statement that can be ignored. When you make a compliment specific and thoughtful, it becomes memorable. The person you message won't just respond. They will feel closer to you because you made them see themselves in a new light. That's the key to Stoic relationships, building connections that are based on true understanding, not just surface-level attraction. Now let's talk about why this works so well in messaging. Most people's inboxes are filled with unoriginal transactional conversations, messages that are easy to forget. But when you receive a message that feels deeply personal, it stands out. It makes you stop and think. And when a message makes someone stop and think, they're far more likely to reply. Because in that moment, you are no longer just another notification. You are someone who made them feel something real. Another way to make this even more effective is by tying the compliment to a memory. For example, instead of saying, "You're so good at listening," say, "I was thinking about that time we were talking about specific topic, and I realized how rare it is to meet someone who actually listens without just waiting for their turn to talk." That's such a rare skill. This type of message does three things at once. It gives a compliment, it reminds them of a shared moment, and it makes them reflect on a positive trait they might not usually notice about themselves. But be careful. Insincerity is easy to spot. If you throw out forced compliments just to get a response, it won't work. People can tell when you're being real and when you're just trying to get their attention. The power of a personalized compliment comes from its authenticity. It should come from a place of genuine admiration and curiosity, not just a tactic. To make someone reply, Stoicism teaches us that in relationships, true power comes from being authentic, intentional, and aware. If you can train yourself to notice what makes people truly unique, your words will always carry more weight. Now, let's talk about how people respond to this. The moment someone receives a compliment that feels deeply personal and thoughtful, something shifts in their mind. Instead of just replying out of obligation, they feel compelled to respond because the message resonates with them on a deeper level. And once a conversation starts from a place of appreciation rather than obligation, it flows more naturally. If you've ever struggled with getting people to engage in meaningful conversations, start using this type of message today. Take a moment to think about someone in your life. What is something about them that is truly rare and valuable? Send them a message that shows you see them in a way most people don't. Watch how they respond. And if you're enjoying this so far, if this is making sense to you, hit the like button right now and comment number 1 below. I want to know if this is resonating with you, if you're seeing how small changes in messaging can make a huge difference. Also, make sure you subscribe, because the next message we're about to cover is something that taps into nostalgia and emotional connection. And once you use it, you'll be able to create conversations that feel natural, deep, and unforgettable. 3. The shared memory message. Nostalgia is one of the most powerful emotional forces in human psychology. It has the ability to transport people back in time, making them feel something deeply. Memories hold weight because they are tied to emotions, and emotions create connection. That's why a message that taps into a shared experience can be almost impossible to ignore. When you remind someone of a meaningful or even just a funny moment you both experienced, you aren't just sending a message. You're reopening a door to a past emotion that they will instinctively want to revisit. Think about it. Have you ever smelled a familiar scent and instantly been reminded of a person or a place? Have you ever heard an old song and suddenly found yourself reliving an entire moment from your past? This happens because our brains are wired to link emotions with experiences. When you send a message that evokes a shared memory, you are triggering this same psychological effect. The other person doesn't just recall the event, they feel it again. And once someone is emotionally engaged, they will almost always respond. But not all memory-based messages are created equal. The key is choosing the right type of memory to bring up. If you just text someone, "Remember that time we got coffee?" That's too generic. It doesn't create enough emotional weight to demand a response. But if you say, "I just passed by that coffee shop where we spent 2 hours debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza. I still think I won that argument." Now you've done something different. You've tied a specific place to a specific moment, and you've added a touch of humor or friendly challenge. Now the other person is far more likely to respond because the message is rich in personal context. What makes this method so effective is that it also taps into individual identity. People love being reminded of moments that made them feel happy, adventurous, unique, or even ridiculous. When you reference a shared memory, you aren't just saying, "Remember when this happened?" You're saying, "Remember who we were in that moment." This is powerful because it subtly reminds the person of their connection with you and what made your dynamic special. This approach is especially strong in Stoic relationships, where genuine bonds are built over time through meaningful interactions rather than fleeting, surface-level conversations. When you remind someone of an experience that meant something to both of you, it strengthens the emotional fabric of your connection. Whether it's a deep conversation you once had, a funny mistake you both made, or an adventure you shared, bringing it up in a message makes it real again. Another way to make this even more effective is by linking the memory to the present moment. For example, instead of just saying, "Remember that concert we went to?" you could say, "I just heard band's name on the radio, and it took me right back to that concert we went to. Still one of the best nights ever." This technique works because it makes the memory feel alive in the now, not just a distant moment from the past. It also subtly places you in the other person's present thoughts, making it even harder for them to ignore your message. But what if you don't have any significant memories to pull from? Even small, seemingly meaningless moments can be turned into powerful messages when framed the right way. Maybe you both struggled to open a stubborn jar of peanut butter once. Maybe you got lost on the way to a party. Maybe you both laughed uncontrollably at something random. The moment itself doesn't have to be life-changing. What matters is how it made you both feel. If it brought joy, excitement, or even frustration that later turned into laughter, it's worth bringing up. One important thing to remember, though, is that not every shared memory will hit the same way for both people. Some experiences that stood out to you might not have had the same emotional impact on them. That's why it's best to choose memories that were clearly meaningful to both of you. A good test is this. If you were to bring it up in conversation, in person, would their face light up? If the answer is yes, it's a strong memory to reference in a message. Another advanced way to use this method is by connecting the memory to an open-ended question. For example, instead of just saying, "I just remembered that time we got caught in the rain on our way to that party," you could say, "I just remembered that time we got caught in the rain on our way to that party. If that happened today, do you think we'd still run through the streets laughing, or would we just Uber instead?" This does two things. It reminds them of the fun memory, and it invites them into a new conversation. There's also a fascinating reason why this method works so well in messaging. Most conversations in texts are present-focused. They revolve around, "What are you up to?" or "How's your day?" While there's nothing wrong with that, it can sometimes feel repetitive and shallow. But when you bring up a shared memory, you introduce depth. You shift the focus from the everyday routine to something unique between the two of you. This makes your message stand out immediately, especially in a sea of boring, surface-level conversations. At its core, this messaging technique isn't about the memory itself, it's about what it represents. It's about saying, "We have history. We've had moments that mattered, and those moments still mean something to me." That's why it works so well. Because people don't just want to be reminded of things, they want to be reminded that they were part of something special. The next time you want to start a conversation, instead of just sending a generic message, take a moment to think back. What was a moment that made you both laugh? What was an experience that brought you closer? What is a memory that still makes you smile? Send a message that brings that memory to life again. Because when you do, you aren't just sending words, you are reigniting a connection. 4. The playful challenge message. There's something undeniably compelling about a challenge. The moment someone dares us to prove something, our instincts kick in. We suddenly feel the need to respond, defend, or participate. This is why a playful challenge in a message works so well. It sparks engagement in a way that feels fun, natural, and impossible to ignore. Unlike ordinary texts that can be dismissed or forgotten, a challenge triggers something deeper, the desire to win, to prove a point, or simply to play along. But here's where most people go wrong. They think a challenge has to be competitive or confrontational. That's not the case at all. The best challenges in messaging are light-hearted, engaging, and create a sense of fun. They invite the other person into a dynamic conversation rather than just stating something they can passively acknowledge. A message like, "Bet you can't guess what just reminded me of you," is far more likely to get a reply than, "I saw something that reminded me of you." The reason? The first message makes it interactive. It turns a simple statement into a mini game. The other person feels compelled to play along, which is exactly what makes this type of message so effective. Think about how people react when they hear, "You'll never guess what happened to me today." Instantly, their brain starts searching for possibilities. They don't just read the message, they engage with it, even before they respond. That's the power of a well-placed challenge. It shifts the conversation from being one-sided to being collaborative. Instead of just reading your message, they now have to think, predict, or even argue, keeping them engaged longer and making them far more likely to reply. Another example, instead of saying, "I just had the best meal ever," you could say, "I just had the best meal ever, and I bet you can't guess what it was." What happens next? Instead of just saying, "That's nice," and moving on, they start guessing. They get curious. They want to prove they know you well enough to figure it out. And suddenly, what could have been a boring statement turns into an interactive exchange. Challenges work especially well because they tap into an innate psychological drive, the need to win or be right. People love proving themselves, even in casual conversations. A message like, "I just found the one song I know you'd never skip. Bet you can guess what it is," immediately triggers that competitive edge. They now have to guess. They might even feel a little excited if they think they know the answer. And that's the key, turning a basic message into something that makes the other person emotionally invested. The best part about using playful challenges in messaging is that they create ongoing momentum. Instead of just getting a single reply, a well-placed challenge often leads to multiple exchanges, playful back and forths, and deeper engagement. And the more engaged someone is in a conversation, the more connected they feel to you. This is why Stoic relationships thrive on communication that is intentional and engaging, because real connection isn't built through small talk, it's built through shared experiences, even in conversations. Another fun way to apply this method is through inside jokes and shared history. If you have an ongoing joke with someone, turning it into a challenge makes it even more powerful. For example, if you and a friend always argue over the best pizza topping, you could text, "Guess what? I just found a pizza place that finally proves I was right all along. Think you can handle the truth?" Now, instead of just referencing the joke, you're reviving it in a way that makes them want to jump in. It's not just a message, it's an invitation to interact. One of the most underrated elements of this messaging strategy is how well it works in all types of relationships. Whether you're texting a friend, a romantic interest, or even someone you've just met, a playful challenge immediately breaks the pattern of dull conversations. It shifts the dynamic from passive communication, where one person sends a statement and the other responds out of politeness, to active engagement, where both people are equally involved in keeping the conversation going. And if you really want to make this work on another level, combine it with a reward element. For example, if you can guess the movie I just watched, I'll buy you coffee next time. Now there's something at stake, even if it's small. The reward doesn't have to be serious. It's the playful nature that makes it compelling. This is the kind of message that gets an instant response, because now it feels like a game rather than just another text. But remember, timing matters. Just like in Stoicism, where we learn that context is everything, knowing when to use a challenge is just as important as knowing how to use one. If the conversation is already flowing naturally, a well-placed challenge can add even more energy. But if the conversation has been slow or distant, suddenly throwing in a challenge might feel forced. The key is to read the moment and introduce it when it feels natural. If you're still wondering how powerful this really is, think about your own experiences. When was the last time someone challenged you in a fun way? Did you ignore them? Or did you feel compelled to respond? That's the beauty of this messaging style. It turns even the simplest conversation into something dynamic and engaging. And once you master this, you'll never have to worry about being ignored again. By now, you've seen how curiosity hooks, personalized compliments, shared memories, and playful challenges create conversations that demand attention. But we're not done yet. The next message on our list is one of the most emotionally charged techniques. It's something that doesn't just make people respond, but makes them feel deeply connected to you. And once you use it, you'll understand why some conversations stay in people's minds long after they're over. And if you're enjoying this so far, if you're seeing how these techniques can change the way people respond to you, hit the like button right now and comment number 1 below. Let me know if you've ever received a message like this, or better yet, if you've ever sent one and seen how powerful it can be. And of course, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next might just change the way you communicate forever. 5. The emotional trigger message. Emotion drives human behavior more than logic ever will. People might forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. This is why messages that trigger strong emotions create the kind of engagement that is impossible to ignore. When a message makes someone feel curious, excited, nostalgic, or even deeply moved, they don't just see it, they experience it. And when people experience something, they feel a natural urge to respond. Most conversations stay at the surface level. Casual exchanges about what's happening, what someone is doing, or small talk that fades quickly. But a message that taps into emotion cuts through the noise. It shifts the conversation from being just another interaction to something that matters. Instead of simply asking someone, "How was your day?" you could say, "I was thinking about you today, and it made me realize something I've never told you before." That message instantly creates a moment. The person reading it isn't just receiving a question. They're being pulled into a deeper space of emotion and meaning. One of the most powerful ways to use this technique is through unexpected appreciation. People rarely hear deep, meaningful compliments outside of special occasions. We wait for birthdays, anniversaries, or big moments to tell someone how much they mean to us. But when appreciation comes out of nowhere, it hits differently. Imagine sending a message that says, "I don't think I've ever told you this, but the way you handle tough situations is something I've always admired. It's really rare, and I just wanted you to know that." A message like this isn't just kind, it's impactful. It makes the recipient pause, reflect, and feel seen in a way that most people never take the time to express. Another way to trigger emotion in a message is by sharing vulnerability. Most people are used to conversations that stay in the safe zone. But when someone opens up, not in a heavy way, but in a real way, it shifts the dynamic. Instead of texting, "Hope you're having a good day," imagine saying, "Today was rough, but it reminded me of something you once said, and honestly, it helped a lot." That kind of message isn't just something someone glances at and forgets. It's something that makes them feel connected to you in a deeper way. The key to making emotional trigger messages work is authenticity. If a message feels forced or dramatic just for the sake of getting attention, it loses its power. People can sense when something is real and when it's just a tactic. The best emotional trigger messages come from a place of genuine thought and feeling. If something someone did inspired you, tell them. If you had a moment of realization that made you appreciate them more, share it. When a message is honest, it lands differently. It stays with people. One of the most fascinating things about emotional messages is how they create lasting impact. Most texts are temporary. They're read, responded to, and forgotten. But a message that makes someone feel something deeply lingers in their mind long after they've replied. It's the kind of message that gets reread, the kind that someone might screenshot and save because it meant something. This is why Stoicism teaches us to communicate with purpose, to make our words matter instead of just filling space with empty conversation. Another way to use this effectively is through shared emotions. If you're watching a sunset and it reminds you of a deep conversation you once had with someone, telling them that connects your present experience to a past moment of meaning. If a song comes on that instantly takes you back to a powerful memory with someone, sharing that with them reignites not just the memory but the emotion attached to it. When you do this, you're not just starting a conversation. You're bringing someone into an emotional experience with you. But emotional trigger messages don't always have to be serious. They can also be exciting, uplifting, or even humorous in a way that taps into deep feelings. A message like, "I just realized something that makes me appreciate you even more," instantly creates intrigue and warmth. The recipient will want to know what you realized. They'll feel valued before they even know what you're about to say. And that feeling alone is enough to guarantee a response. At the core of Stoic relationships, communication isn't just about exchanging words. It's about creating understanding and connection. Messages that trigger emotion do exactly that. They remind people that they matter, that they are valued, and that their presence in your life has meaning. And when a message does that, it is never ignored. 6. The urgent and exclusive message. Scarcity and urgency are two of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When people feel like they might miss out on something important, they instinctively pay more attention. This is why limited time offers, breaking news, and insider information always capture interest. We are wired to respond when something feels exclusive, when we feel like we're getting access to something that not everyone else has. And when you use this in messaging, you create a pull that makes it nearly impossible to be ignored. Think about the last time someone said to you, "I have to tell you something," but you can't tell anyone else. Didn't that immediately make you want to know more? That's the power of exclusivity. It makes the recipient feel like they are part of something special. When a message is framed as something urgent or secret, it activates a sense of importance that demands attention. Compare these two messages. "I saw something interesting today," versus "You have to hear this before anyone else does." The second one instantly creates a feeling of priority. It tells the recipient that this information is time-sensitive and exclusive. The trick to making this work is setting up anticipation. If you just drop information too quickly, it loses its effect. But if you build a little tension, you make the other person need to know more. Imagine sending, "I just found out something that changes everything. You won't believe it." That message doesn't just make someone curious, it creates urgency. They don't just want to reply, they feel like they have to. But urgency isn't just about making things seem dramatic. It works best when it feels real and relevant. If you always use phrases like, "You won't believe this," or "I have huge news," but then follow it with something minor, the effect will weaken over time. That's why the best urgent and exclusive messages work when they actually matter, when they are tied to genuine excitement, personal relevance, or an element of surprise. Another powerful way to use this technique is through the fear of missing out, FOMO. People don't like feeling left out, and when a message suggests that they might miss something interesting, they are far more likely to engage. A simple example: we're talking about something crazy right now, and you need to be part of this. Even if they weren't initially interested, the idea that something is happening without them makes them want to jump in. This is why social proof is so effective. People naturally gravitate toward what others are engaged in, especially if it feels exclusive. This approach is especially useful in Stoic relationships, where communication isn't about chasing attention, but about strategically creating meaningful interactions. When you send a message that feels exclusive or time-sensitive, it signals that the other person is important enough to be included. It makes them feel valued, involved, and part of something special. Another way to frame this is by adding a condition to the urgency. Instead of saying, "I have something crazy to tell you," say, "I have something crazy to tell you, but you have to promise you won't laugh." That tiny adjustment makes the other person even more invested, because now they aren't just receiving information. They are part of a social contract that makes them more engaged. You can also use urgency in a playful way. For example, "I have exactly 1 minute before I have to do something, so I'm going to tell you this quickly. Are you ready?" This makes the message feel like a countdown, adding a small layer of excitement. Even if the other person wasn't planning to reply immediately, now they feel pressure to respond fast before the moment is gone. But here's the key. Urgency works best when it's balanced. If everything you send feels urgent, nothing truly feels urgent. The most effective way to use this is sparingly at the right moments, when you genuinely have something exciting, time-sensitive, or exclusive to share. When used correctly, it transforms the way people engage with you. They start to see your messages as high priority rather than optional. And if you've been finding these strategies helpful so far, hit the like button right now and comment number 1 below. Let me know if you've ever received a message that felt so urgent you had to reply instantly. Also, make sure to subscribe, because the final message we're about to cover is the most powerful one of all. It creates a psychological pull so strong that once you use it, you'll understand why some messages get responses, no matter what. 7. The open loop message. The human mind craves closure. When something is left incomplete, it lingers. This is why cliffhangers in movies keep people hooked, why unfinished stories stay in our thoughts, and why we feel an irresistible pull towards solving unanswered questions. The open loop messaging technique taps into this exact psychological mechanism, making it one of the most effective ways to guarantee a response. When done correctly, it creates a mental itch that the other person feels compelled to scratch. An open loop works by leaving a thought or idea unfinished, forcing the recipient to seek closure. Compare these two messages: "I just realized something interesting about you," versus "I just realized something interesting about you, but I'm not sure if I should tell you." The second message creates tension. It plants a question in the other person's mind. What did they realize? Why wouldn't they tell me? And that question demands an answer. Ignoring it feels incomplete, which is why open loops are so hard to resist. The key to making an open loop effective is balancing curiosity and restraint. If you reveal too much too soon, the loop closes before it even starts working. But if you're too vague or indirect, it might feel frustrating rather than intriguing. The best open loops provide just enough information to create anticipation without fully resolving the thought. A message like, "I just had the weirdest conversation about you today," sparks interest without giving away the details. It makes the recipient need to follow up to satisfy their curiosity. Another powerful way to use this technique is by introducing a statement that feels like a personal revelation. For example, "I was thinking about something you said a while ago, and it completely changed how I see things." This works because it doesn't just create an open loop. It also makes the recipient feel impactful. Now, they don't just want to know what you realized, they also feel like they played a role in shaping your thoughts. That personal connection makes it even harder to ignore. You can also apply this in a playful way. Instead of saying, "I just remembered something funny," you could say, "I just remembered something funny you did, but I don't think I should bring it up." That subtle hesitation, "but I don't think I should bring it up," creates an immediate hook. The recipient now feels invested in finding out what it was. It's no longer just a message. It's a mystery waiting to be solved. One of the best things about open loop messages is that they don't feel forced. Unlike messages that demand attention aggressively, open loops work because they make the other person want to engage. They don't rely on pressure or urgency. Instead, they create a natural pull that makes ignoring them feel incomplete. This technique is incredibly effective in Stoic relationships, where conversations are built on intention and depth rather than just surface-level exchanges. When you send a message that creates an open loop, you're not just starting a conversation, you're creating an experience. The recipient isn't just responding out of politeness, they are actively drawn into the interaction. However, the timing and delivery of an open loop message matter just as much as the wording. If someone is already engaged in conversation with you, an open loop can keep the momentum going. But if the conversation has been slow or distant, suddenly dropping a cryptic message might feel out of place. The best way to use this technique is when there's already some level of engagement or emotional connection. This way, the message doesn't feel random. It feels like a natural continuation of an ongoing connection. Another way to enhance the effect of an open loop is by adding a delay before revealing the answer. For example, after sending a message like, "I just realized something interesting about you," if they reply asking, "What is it?" you can say, "Hold on, I'll tell you in a sec, just got distracted." This brief delay makes the curiosity even stronger because now they aren't just waiting for an answer, they are actively anticipating it. But as powerful as open loops are, they should be used sparingly and with intention. If every message you send is an open loop, it starts to feel like a gimmick rather than a genuine way to spark conversation. The key is to mix it naturally with other messaging techniques, so it feels authentic rather than a predictable habit. At its core, the open loop technique isn't just about getting a response, it's about engagement. It turns passive conversations into active ones, making interactions feel more dynamic, more thought-provoking, and more memorable. When a message makes someone feel intrigued, invested, and engaged, it isn't just another text. It becomes something they think about even after the conversation ends. At the core of every strong connection is engagement, the kind of communication that makes people feel intrigued, appreciated, emotionally invested, and eager to respond. The reason messages get ignored isn't always about the person sending them. It's about the way they are framed. When a message sparks curiosity, emotion, nostalgia, playfulness, urgency, or a sense of exclusivity, it creates a natural pull that makes it almost impossible to dismiss. These 7 messaging techniques work because they align with fundamental human psychology. We are drawn to what makes us feel important, to what makes us think, to what makes us feel something real, resonates on a deeper level. Think about it. When was the last time you received a text that made you stop what you were doing just to reply? What made it different? It probably wasn't just the words, it was how they made you feel. That's the key. Whether it was a curiosity hook that made you itch for the answer, a personalized compliment that made you feel valued, a shared memory that transported you back to a meaningful moment, a playful challenge that made the conversation fun, an emotional trigger that sparked deep engagement, an urgent and exclusive message that made you feel included, or an open loop that left you hanging. You felt something. And that feeling is what makes all the difference between a message that gets ignored and a message that demands attention. But beyond just getting a response, these techniques are about building better conversations, ones that feel effortless, dynamic, and meaningful. In Stoic relationships, we don't chase attention. We cultivate genuine engagement through communication that is intentional and impactful. By mastering these approaches, you shift the way people interact with you. Your messages no longer feel like just another notification. They feel like something worth responding to. Now, the real question is, which of these techniques will you try first? The next time you reach for your phone to send a message, don't settle for something ordinary. Choose a message that creates intrigue, sparks emotion, or builds a deeper connection. Because once you start using these, you won't just get more responses. You'll start having conversations that truly matter.